On KPBS Evening Edition, a caravan of families and classmates crossing the border. Their missions highlight 43 students missing in Mexico. Flying high, meet the first female pilot to serve in the Afghan military since the fall of the Taliban. Her mission to help women thrive.
And 4 years after the Fukushima nuclear meltdown, there is growing concern over earthquake faults and stored fuel at San Onofre's decommissioned nuclear power plant. I'm Peggy Pico with that conversation. And San Diego's North County economy is rebounding. What a new report says about job growth and the future.
Also, San Diego sets its sights on clean energy. We'll tell you about an ambitious plan to tap renewable sources. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. They're demanding answers. Parents and classmates will cross the border this month, raising awareness of 43 students who disappeared in Mexico 6 months ago. A coalition of Latino human rights groups will travel with the caravan, with plans to arrive in San Diego in a couple of weeks. Our KPBS Fronteras reporter, Jean Guerrero, brings us this update.
The caravan includes a mother and a father, as well as 2 students who escaped the kidnapping. It's one of 3 groups that will cross the border and visit at least 45 U.S. cities. Since the students disappeared in late September, numerous protests have been held across Mexico as well as abroad. The group coming to San Diego will be holding events in the city for 2 days, including a protest march on the 24th, starting at the San Diego City College. The following day, the caravan will head to the North County and continue on up the coast. The goal of the visits is to spread international awareness about the case of the missing students. Parents, survivors, and many others distrust the Mexican government's investigation into the tragedy. Authorities say the students were killed by a local drug cartel, who were working with local officers, including the mayor. The victims' families believe they need international help to solve the case. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
Another update tonight on that corruption scandal involving Calexico's police union and top city officials. There's new leadership for the union following the termination of 3 officers. Now, we first told you about an FBI investigation back in January, and the police chief's claim union leaders were, in his words, acting like the mob with threats and intimidation. The union has dropped its defamation claim against the city and hired a new president to help improve relations in the community. A federal judge has outlined a plan for California to end nearly a decade of federal control over its prison health care system. This after a court-appointed overseer reported that conditions have substantially improved since 2006. The judge says each of the state's 34 prisons must pass an inspection before they can be returned to state control. The inspections are expected to take more than a year. So far, California spent $2 billion for new prison medical facilities. Up in the air, the future of President Obama's health care law. It's being challenged in a case before the Supreme Court. A new government report shows people may lose up to $24 billion a year in health care subsidies. Opponents of the Affordable Care Act claim those subsidies are illegal in states using federal health insurance exchanges. California and 13 other states operate their own exchanges. Tapping into renewable energy, last week we told you about the City of San Diego's ambitious plans for helping the environment. As KPBS reporter Claire Trageser tells us, one of the goals involves changing the way we get our energy.
Mayor Kevin Faulkner's climate action plan calls for a lot of things, like reducing car use and boosting recycling. But one of the biggest is
by moving San Diego toward a goal of 100% renewable energy.
Renewable energy means power that comes from sources that don't deplete over time. Right now, San Diego Gas and Electric provides San Diego's power. The utility says 32% of its energy is renewable. Getting to 100% would likely involve something with the bulky name Community Choice Aggregation. But what is it? Here's Ty Tosdahl, a lawyer who helped Marin County in Northern California set up Community Choice.
Okay, so Community Choice Aggregation is the name of an alternative energy program. And that program is similar to a utility in the sense that it serves residents and businesses. but the similarities stop there. It is not-for-profit. It is overseen by local government. It is completely optional for customers, so if a customer does not want to participate in the program, they can go with the utility.
Here's how it works. Right now, your power comes through SDG&E's system of lines and wires. SDG&E buys the electricity from a variety of sources, including natural gas plants, hydroelectric dams, and wind turbine farms. If the city goes with Community Choice Aggregation, or CCA, our power would still go through SDG&E's grid, but the city would buy the energy, not the utility.
The CCA programs do not actually deliver the power. That function stays with the utility. So CCA program buys the power, interacts with customers who choose to participate, and then the power is still delivered by the utility.
The idea is to give the city more control over where the power comes from, which would help achieve its goal of getting all energy from renewable sources by 2035.
If the city sets a goal like that, it has no ability to require the utility to play along and achieve that goal. The CCA program can help advance that goal.
Under community choice programs, utility customers decide where their energy comes from. Residents can choose a plan that uses only renewable energy, which might cost more, or a plan that costs less and uses less renewable energy. Or customers can opt out of the program altogether and stick with SDG&E. A spokeswoman for SDG&E said in a statement that the utility, quote, supports a customer's right to choose its electricity service provider, including community choice aggregation. Legally, SDG&E isn't allowed to lobby against community choice, but Nicole Capretz is still expecting a fight over it. She heads the nonprofit climate action campaign that will act as a watchdog over the city's climate action plan. The original version of the plan, which she wrote for City Councilman Todd Gloria, said community choice aggregation would be used to get to 100% renewable energy. In Mayor Faulkner's version of the plan, it says, quote, community choice aggregation or another program. Capretz says she doesn't think another program would work.
From what I can see, the city needs to have full control over the solution to get us to 100% renewable energy. And community choice energy is really the only policy platform that allows us to have that control.
Faulkner told KPBS Evening Edition that he's going to look at a variety of ways to reach that 100% goal.
Put all options on the table because it's important that we achieve that goal.
In the next year, we'll find out what those other options might be and whether San Diego's elected officials will support community choice aggregation. A study on whether the program would work in San Diego and how much it would cost will be released soon. Claire Tregeser, KPBS News.
Video journalist Nick McVicker helped produce that story. You can find our two-part series on the city's environmental projects at kpbs.org. State agencies have struck a deal with the EPA to improve oversight after failing to prevent oil companies from flushing wastewater into wells used for drinking water and irrigation. Outraged lawmakers want to change lax oversight and decades of permitting. In the past 9 months, 23 wastewater injection wells were shut down after contaminating nearby drinking water.
As we go through a drought and as the water becomes more precious, then what might have been a well that was of non-interest or a borderline well in 1983 is in 2015 is an asset to the community.
The agreement was made without any legislative knowledge or input and requires the state to get back in compliance by November 2017. A new legal challenge for the State Public Utilities Commission. 2 San Diego attorneys are suing the embattled agency for hiring criminal defense lawyers in secret. As KPBS investigative reporter Meetha Sharma tells us, the lawyers argue the PUC is required to explain what's going on.
Lawyer Mia Severson and law partner former San Diego City Attorney Mike Aguirre argue the PUC illegally hired the law firm of Shepard Mullen by keeping the decision out of public view. The PUC says the state contract manual authorizes the hiring of outside counsel and to provide for the defense of criminal actions. Spokeswoman Terry Prosper, however, did not address whether the PUC was required to do that in public. The PUC is the target of federal and state state investigations for alleged inappropriate contact with the power companies it regulates. Severson also wants a court to force the PUC to release internal communications on the nearly $5 billion settlement to shut down the San Onofre nuclear power plant. Investigators found notes during a search of former PUC President Michael Peavy's home in January showing he talked with a Southern California Edison executive in 2013 about a cost-sharing deal for San Onofre's closure. Amitha Sharma, KPBS News.
It's been 4 years since the nuclear meltdown of the Fukushima plant in Japan. A tsunami triggered by a 9.0 earthquake crippled the reactor, leading to massive evacuations. Peggy Pico has a look at nuclear concerns closer to home.
If you live in California, you've probably felt an earthquake or two over the years. The reason, of course, are the many faults running through Southern California. And like Fukushima, California also has nuclear reactors along our coastline. Diablo Canyon is the state's last operating nuclear power plant in Northern California. And even though San Onofre nuclear plant is shut down, nuclear fuel will remain on site for decades. Southern California Edison manages San Onofre and offers updates through scheduled public meetings. My guests are UC San Diego energy expert David Victor, who chairs the public panel meetings, and Rochelle Becker with the Alliance for Nuclear Responsibility. And David, what are some of the key lessons we've learned from the Fukushima disaster that we can apply here in California?
I think there's a tendency to focus on the technical lessons, but in my mind, what's really important is independence and transparency. Japanese regulatory system was not very independent and not very transparent, and so that allowed regulators and the people who ran the reactor to really not check on each other, and that really contributed fundamentally to where the reactor was sited and the way it was operated.
How about you, Rochelle? What would you say are the biggest takeaways?
I think the biggest takeaways is that we have to be more careful and we have to be more open with the public. I agree with David that transparency is a big issue. I don't think we've met those goals in California, but I think we are at least looking at them more carefully now.
And David, the nuclear waste stored at San Onofre will remain there for decades because there's no place else in the United States that can handle it or take it right now. How much nuclear waste is there right now, and how much will be added?
Yeah. So all the waste that's been, all the high-level waste that's been generated from the reactor cores ever is still on site because there's no place to put it. In the end, that means there'll be about 150, 160 canisters full of this waste that will be stored on a pad on the site using 2 different technologies. And for the foreseeable future, it's going to be there. One of the things we spent a lot of time in the community engagement panel is trying to develop strategies to put pressure on the federal government to open Yucca Mountain, which is where it could be stored permanently, or maybe more importantly, to develop so-called consolidated interim storage. So places where reactors like San Onofre could send their waste, be stored for a decade or 2 before a final storage place.
Let me ask Rochelle about the safety of these fuel storage canisters. What are your concerns, or do you have concerns about them?
Well, I think that there have been many concerns brought to the public's attention, and I think that they need to be focused on. Our current concern is the fact that Edison has applied to delete its off-site emergency planning starting in 2019, which means the off-site emergency services will no longer be funded. And we're quite concerned that if something happens, an earthquake, a glitch at from transferring the cast from the fuel pools to the cast, would cause some sort of public concern, and that public has no place to turn for information.
Yeah,
it's a penny on the dollar, so I think we should continue the funding.
Okay, let me get David's response on that. So that program's going to stop, and is something going to take its place?
Well, the program's going to stop. The off-site program's going to stop because the risks are dramatically lower when the plant's not operational. That's the logic that's being followed. In one of our meetings later this year, we're going to spend some time looking again at the emergency plan. We've already looked at it once. And maybe there are things that can be done there to help improve information about what's happening at the plant. But I think the key point is that once a reactor stops operating and the fuel is moved into these casks, the risks go down dramatically.
I see. Rochelle, who is paying for this decommissioning, and do we know how much it costs at this point?
The ratepayers are going to be paying for the decommissioning, and it's not quite clear what it costs. Edison will have to apply for the cost for decommissioning. They have about $4 billion collected. They think it's adequate. We don't believe it's going to be adequate. We don't believe they're going to meet their time schedule. It's been unusual for the industry to meet time schedules and budgets in the past, so we're just trying to learn from
And there's so much to talk about this, but we have to wrap with this. And I want to start with you, David. What do you see as the future of nuclear power here in California?
Well, here in California, I think it's limited. I think we're eventually going to see Diablo Canyon, the last operational reactor, shut. The economics of nuclear power in the United States have taken a turn for the worse because of cheap natural gas. Across the United States, we'll probably see a few more reactors built and existing reactors uprated and extended their lifetime. For me, as somebody who studies the energy business worldwide, what's really interesting about nuclear power is the rapid expansion, especially in Asia, China, Korea, now even in the Persian Gulf.
Sure, and let me get, Rochelle, your response on that. Do you agree that nuclear power is leaving California but might be expanding elsewhere?
Well, I think the places that are expanding don't have particularly transparent governments, so the lessons we supposedly learned from Fukushima are not necessarily being applied. I think in the United States it won't happen. I think where they've tried to start new nuclear power plants in the United States, they're passing cost overruns already onto the ratepayers, and they're never receiving a kilowatt of power.
All right, Rochelle Becker and David Victor, thanks so much for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A new study shows post-traumatic stress disorder could be linked with genes involved in the immune system. KPBS science reporter David Wagner explains.
Researchers at UC San Diego and the San Diego VA were part of a team studying Marines before and after deployment. They compared gene activity in those who ended up developing PTSD with those who didn't. They noticed that certain immune system genes were more active in Marines who ended up getting PTSD even before they shipped off to war. VA psychiatrist Dulene Baker co-authored the study identifying these genetic differences.
Those same markers, if you look before deployment, they also serve as a predictor of who goes on to get PTSD.
Now, Baker wants to see further research on why exactly this gene activity is associated with PTSD. She says the goal here is to help the military design a simple screening test for PTSD risk in new recruits. David Wagner, KPBS News.
Even before the Midway was a museum in San Diego, it was the name of a battle that changed the course of World War II in the Pacific. It was a devastating clash between U.S. and Japanese naval forces following the attack on Pearl Harbor in the summer of '42. Andy Mills was one of the 16 million Americans who fought in the war. He was rescued from the sinking Yorktown after coming under enemy fire. Mills was the chief steward and remembers helping clear out the carrier's safe.
I got it open and he gave me his little bag, well, I don't say little bag because it's pretty good size, his money bag. And so I filled it up almost. I said, you want to put some of the silver in it? And he said, no, forget the silver. Says, just put the green stuff in there. And let's get the hell out of here. I said, okay.
Mills was back on the Midway today with family to celebrate his 100th birthday and the newly opened Battle of Midway Theater. Mills is one of the oldest veterans from World War II. There are about 1 million still alive to tell their stories. Soon flying high over San Diego, the first female fixed-wing pilot in Afghanistan's Air Force. Captain Nilofar Rahmani is visiting San Diego this week. As a pilot, she's overcome harassment and threats against her family for her decision to fly. She met other female pilots at Miramar Air Station on Monday and says the experience was inspiring.
In my country, there is no rights for the females, no rights for the female being in the military, no rights being a pilot. And I wanted to be the first. I wanted to go and accept this risk and be a pilot and be an example for other women behind me. This is something make a person very strong, very powerful, to just believe yourself. I'm the same human that the men are. We have to change this. We have to fight for this. If I don't fight for my rights, if I don't do this, who gonna do it? If I don't do it now, when we gonna do it?
Rahmani's visit was arranged by the San Diego Diplomacy Council. She'll fly with the Navy's Blue Angels tomorrow. San Diego's North County region has a larger population than 8 states in the U.S. Peggy Pico finds out how its economy compares and what it means for new jobs.
North County has 9 cities and large unincorporated areas within its boundaries. The Great Recession hit North County harder than the rest of San Diego County, but a new report released today at the 2nd Annual North County Economic Summit finds the area is rebounding faster than Orange and Riverside counties. Here with the details and why it matters are my guests, Josh Williams, president of BW Research, and Carl Morgan, president of San Diego's North Economic Development Council. And Josh, you compiled the economic report. What are some of the key findings on North County's recovery from the Great Recession?
Well, I think the overall number of jobs over the last 4 or 5 years is important. It's grown more than some of the neighboring regions. But I think more importantly is the quality of those jobs. Tier 1 or kind of higher paying, higher skilled jobs grew faster than any other occupational segment. So I think that was a real positive sign of from what we saw from the data.
We're going to come back to the jobs specifically, but what are the top industry clusters did you find?
Yeah, so biotechnology and biomedical devices or life sciences was a strong grower. Clean technology saw some really strong growth as well, and the sports and active lifestyle industry saw good growth as well.
And Carl, the report shows middle-class jobs. We were just talking about the jobs there. They're not increasing as fast as the high-end jobs and the lower-paid jobs. Do we know why?
Well, I just think it's the nature of the economy in North County and how it's evolving and changing. One of the things that we want to do is continue to work on, growing our jobs and make sure that we get out and work with our educators and understand what the skill set needs are in North County, and then work with our business community to keep pace with the actual growth in those key industry clusters. One of our largest is connected tourism, which is over 60,000 jobs in North County, which includes all of those things that you and I do when we go on vacation, but it also includes our wonderful craft beer industry and our wine industry and all of the other theme parks and open space and recreation opportunities in North County.
And let me ask Carl about that. The craft beer was one. Also manufacturing of golf clubs, I understand, is another industry based in North County. How are they doing?
Yeah, it falls in that sports and active lifestyle cluster. And, I'll be honest, they haven't grown as fast as some of the other industries, but we expect them to pick back up, and some of the signs in terms of investment and some of, business expectations are positive.
And Carl, is anything being done? I know some people, the professionals, they live in North County, but they export their services out either further south or elsewhere. Is there anything being done to help keep professionals in North County?
Well, I think one of the things that we see in our economy in North County is you see a lot of folks going out like the tide during the day and then coming back in the evening. They're here for the quality of life and the wonderful lifestyle. But I think that over time, as we grow our economy and as we improve on our industry clusters and make it known to the nation and to the world what a wonderful economy we have in North County, that balance will change. One of the big factors of that is the affordable housing piece, and we really need to work on and spotlight and showcase, and find other ways to create affordable housing for our working families.
And Josh, how does North County's economy right now compare to, let's say, the rest of San Diego economy, either in growth or in sustainability?
Right. So it as I said, it was hit harder from I think you said actually, Peggy, that it was hit harder, and that's correct, by the Great Recession than the rest of San Diego County. But over the last 4 years, from 2010 to 2014, actually that's 5 years, it's grown stronger, and we've seen a stronger recovery, and a lot of that is because industry cluster jobs make up about 34%, just over a third of all jobs, and they've grown and they've recovered, and they've brought in higher paying opportunities for residents.
What would you say is the major problem hurdle in attracting and keeping jobs in North County?
I don't think there's been really one single big issue. I think there are challenges in terms of finding the quality of talent. Even though we do have a skilled workforce, but I think there isn't one single issue. I think it really depends on the industry and it depends on the employer.
Let me ask Carl, same question, but for new businesses, is there a particular hurdle that you think could be worked on?
Well, I think one is, you want to be business friendly. You want to make sure, the communities that are business friendly get the developers and get the housing built and the commercial and the industrial land built. So it's always a matter of, making sure that you let those companies know that you're open for business, and then when they come to your city that you walk them through the process.
All right, Carl Morgan and Josh Williams, thank you so much.
Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you.
Putting the brakes on new red light cameras, there's a bill in Sacramento that would stop cities from installing them. It would also require safety studies from cities who already operate them. Lawmakers say it would improve traffic on city streets.
I've been opposed to these red light cameras from the start. I'm very concerned with the proliferation of cameras that are run by whether it's cities or the state or other levels of government that kind of invade on our daily lives. But the other thing that we've been able to see is that even folks who were sold on these at the beginning are no longer sold on them anymore.
Lawmakers also say the bill would reduce the number of rear-end crashes. They claim crashes happen when drivers make sudden stops to avoid a red light violation.
I'm Gwen Eiffel on the next News Hour. Why a powerful documentary about a gang rape in New Delhi has been banned in India. That's Tuesday on the PBS News Hour.
Look at these guys. Congratulations to two student-run radio stations here in San Diego. They earned top honors at the Intercollegiate Broadcast System Conference in New York City. KKSM at Palomar College took first in the community college category. San Diego State's KCR College Radio won Best Online Station. In fact, some of our KPBS staffers helped with this honor. We're looking at mild to warming conditions over the next few days. Coast looking at 70s and 80s. It's going to be downright hot by the weekend. Sunny inland with a mix of sun and clouds, 70s and 80s. Cooler in the mountain areas, temperatures there in the 60s. As for the desert, warming into the 80s. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition.